All right, welcome back to part two of this swap. So I ran into a little bit of problem after the last video. Nothing real big deal, but so I got my cross member, the top of the frame rail notched out, and I got my lines, everything's marked out, everything's level, everything. I'm really happy with how it's actually fitting. The problem I came into is that I need to cut off this side of the frame in order to be able to fit the Crown Vic front end in here. Now, if I do that, because right now I've only notched the top of the rail, so this is actually sitting, or was sitting, on the bottom section of the frame rail. Now that has to go too. So if I cut all of that out, the whole front of the car, the front of the front clip falls off. And so I wanted to try to keep everything where it was without anything moving. So this is what I came up with. All right, now this is where you probably go, this is crazy. Why did you do all this work? Well, it really only took me maybe an hour at the most. So what I did is I first welded a piece of 1/4 inch strapping that went through the frame rail. Now here's the thing, this is not welded to here. So I can still move this up and down. Now that's a key factor for what I'm gonna be doing next, because I don't know exactly what wheels and tires I wanna run on this project. And I also want to make sure I guarantee it lays frame. And out here by myself, there's sometimes I run into the problem of how do I hold stuff up and move things around and measure and everything else and get an accurate depiction. So I didn't want to just, think I got my math correct. So what I did is I'm going to cheat. All right, I'm going to do kind of a hillbilly way of figuring this out. So what I've got is I've got this plate welded to both sections of the frame, okay? And then I welded this mass of stuff on here. So I loosely welded up kind of like a front notch on both sides. And then I put an X across the front to this bar that I'd also previously welded in to make sure the frame rails didn't go anywhere. So now what this will allow me to do is I'm gonna be able to cut the sides of the frame off. Okay, this bar is gonna not allow this frame rail to fall out, okay, but it will allow this frame rail to go up and down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end up cutting the frame top and bottom. This is not gonna go anywhere now because I've got it welded in multiple places. I've checked it, everything's level, everything's great measurement wise. I've tried to flex it, it doesn't go anywhere. So I'm gonna be able to cut all of this stuff out, put the Crown Vic front end in there, and then I'm gonna cheat, okay? So I make sure that it goes on the ground. I'm gonna lower the car all the way back down once I get the front end underneath it, and I'm gonna make sure it lays frame. All right? I also am probably gonna put like a block of metal or something underneath the front tires to get to the desired tire height that I think I could potentially run one day. Now, ideally, I would already know what tires on wheels I'm gonna be running on this thing, and I would already know exactly what tire height I'm gonna run, but I'm not set on it yet. I don't really love the 16s that came on the Crown Vic because I don't have a ton of tire options, but I don't know if it's really worth spending the extra money to jump up to, like, say, a Detroit Steel 20. I think that looks kind of getting played out, and so I don't know where I want to go yet. So what I would rather do is set it up with the possibility that I could just bolt on, 20s down the road or something else, and I make a spacer in the bag mount and set the front end. So I want to lay the car all the way down on the frame. Then I can then basically start tack welding in once I get everything centered and lined up again, make sure everything's perfect. I can start welding this piece here to the other part of the frame. All right, and then from there I can cut all this junk out. Once I get all this secured, the front end's back secure, and go from there. With that, after I do that, I'm gonna then probably air up the car to ride height, check the steering, everything else, make sure that I don't have any crazy bump steer kind of situations going on, and go from there. So that's kind of the game plan as of right now. I'm probably not gonna do a time lapse on this. I'm just gonna start working, and I'll come back once I get some of this other stuff, kind of sorted out here in a second. So stick around, I'll be right back. All right, so you just heard 4 minutes of me talking about how things were going well, and that's where everything went dramatically south from there. So one of the reasons I started to record this and try to film this was I saw a lot of stuff going on online with the Ford trucks using this Crown Vic front end, and I wanted to put it in a car. Now, a lot of people I saw were swapping the entire frame and basically just doing a body swap onto the car. I did not want to do that for this project. The car is a little bit too nice to do all that. If I was going to do that, I'd start cutting out the floors and body drop it and make all new body mounts and that kind of thing. So I wanted to graft this front end into the factory Packard frame. So where I've ran into some problems, and I want to explain this so that way if somebody else is looking into this, you can understand and maybe look and see, take measurements wise. So in the Ford trucks, the frame rails are pretty much straight from the engine back. You know, they may kick down underneath the cab or whatever, but there's enough straight frame to where these front ends fit really well. What I ran into after that 4-minute video of me explaining how things were going great, when I went to put the front end in, basically what I ran into was this lower control arm here. As it comes back, there's a bushing. Now this bushing is what's going to keep the caster of the tire, the wheel, everything straight. And it has to be at 33.5 inches center to center from the other side. This bushing was going to hit the factory frame dead center. Now, if you see over here where I've butchered the absolute crap out of the other side, all right, I did this on this side as well. I started to notch the side of the frame. I tried to cut up, you know, up towards the side and try to figure out how I could actually fit this in there. What I came to a conclusion was it wasn't going to happen. Basically, where it needed to go was dead center, and there was no room to actually then stiffen up the frame and make it to where I felt comfortable going down the road with my family in the car. So what I ended up doing is I ended up cutting it off. And what I found is I had to make a whole new frame section. So this is where I'm at currently. All right, so this is, if you were planning on doing one of these in a car, you might want to factor in this, okay? So the Packard frame right here swept up at a nice angle. This bushing got completely in the way of that. So I end up having to make a straight section, now kind of like the Ford trucks. All right, so this is what I got going on. I got some 3x6 1/4-inch tubing that I have cut at an angle here. I put a nice real deep bevel on it, that way I could get a really good penetrated weld, root pass and then a cover pass. Then also in the other room I have a CNC plasma table, so I made this fish plate here and I got that guy welded on. So if we come around here, I can show you. Essentially what I have going on is I have created a whole new frame rail here that comes up, fish plate also on the inside, and comes over to the Crown Vic front end. This will allow me to have enough room for the bearing. I don't know if I'm going to run that style bearing or I'm going to make a version like this using like some 4x4 links. There's a couple companies that make a style like this that they use for the Ford trucks. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I may try to run that factory mount. The nice thing if you run a factory mount of bushing is that in the event that you need to replace one, you just go to the store, you buy one, you bolt it on. That would require me to make some new mounts and get that thing fabbed up where it needs to be. Not a big deal. Otherwise, I got to make my own stuff here, and I'll tie it in on the inside of the frame rail. So essentially, everything was going really well until I started to actually put the suspension in. You know, and this was the main culprit for all the slowdown and lack of content for the last couple weeks. Me trying to figure it out, trying to cut, try to do stuff, try to get creative, try to use more parts of the old Crown Vic frame, and basically came to the conclusion of it was just not going to work, and start cutting out and let's just go from there. So what I got going on is everything's level, nice and straight. The rack is in there, perfectly level. The front end's level, cross member's level. Everything is square according to my measurements. Everything looks pretty good. The only thing I've got that, you know, possible concern a little bit is my rack is pretty level, and so is my tie rod, which is great, except for right now I've only have it set up to where it's 2 inches off the ground, which means that without having bump steer, that would give me a ride height of about 2 inches, which will look killer going down the road. We might need to go up just a little bit from there, but I think we'll be just fine. The reason I have it set up for that is, once again, it's where if I need to bolt on a set of, or I want to, I should say, bolt on like a set of 20s, right now they will clear and the car will still lay frame. So this is where I last left off. Where I'm going next from here is basically I need to duplicate this side here over on the other side. So I've got to remove the steering shaft and the shifter linkage and start cutting away and basically duplicate this here. For now, I just have everything kind of tacked in place. I wanted to get everything in, make sure it all seems square, everything looks like it's correct, and then I'll go ahead and burn it all in, gusset it, fish plate it, everything there, make sure nothing's going to move, and then I can finally cut all this monstrosity off the car. So thank you for watching. I apologize for the delay. Hopefully have some more content coming soon where I'm actually making some decent progress. So stay tuned.